The process of memorization in the brain. The process of memorization in the brain is surprisingly complex, yet fascinating. Imagine that with every new piece of information you learn, your brain builds a network of interconnected roads called synapses. These roads allow information to circulate more quickly and efficiently. The more you access this road, meaning the more you review the information, the stronger it becomes. This strengthening process is called memory consolidation, which is the key to ensuring that information remains available in the long term. There are different types of memory, such as short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory is like a shelf where we quickly store small pieces of information, but it's limited. Long-term memory, comparable to a library, stores information permanently, but to place it there, the brain must work actively. One secret to improving memorization is activating different regions of the brain, reinforcing these neural connections through constant practice. The rest of the steps focus on how we can stimulate these brain roads to better consolidate information. Step 1. Break information into smaller pieces. Chunking. When we try to memorize large volumes of information at once, it's like trying to carry more bags than we can hold. The brain's ability to process and retain data is limited, and forcing yourself to learn everything at once can be more harmful than beneficial. This is where the chunking technique comes in, which cleverly divides information into smaller, more manageable pieces. Imagine your brain working like a suitcase. If you try to pack everything at once, nothing will be organized, and the suitcase will become chaotic. But if you fold your clothes, organize them by type, and group similar items, suddenly everything fits perfectly. For example, instead of trying to memorize a long sequence of numbers or letters all at once, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can break the sequence into more manageable blocks. 1, 23, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These blocks are much easier for the brain to process and store because they follow a pattern we're already familiar with. The trick lies in reducing cognitive load, turning large amounts of data into small chunks of information that are easier to digest. Think of it as cutting a pizza into slices rather than trying to eat the whole pizza at once. This technique is efficient because our short-term memory has limited capacity. Typically, we can retain about 7 items at a time, as demonstrated by psychological studies. With chunking, you increase this capacity by packaging information in a logical and organized way. The brain no longer needs to remember each item individually, but instead recalls the groupings as a whole. This dramatically increases memorization efficiency, making it easier to remember large amounts of data. Chunking can be applied in various everyday situations, whether studying for an exam, memorizing shopping lists, organizing ideas for a presentation, or even planning your daily work tasks. The more you practice this technique, the more natural it becomes. And soon, you'll notice that your brain starts grouping information automatically. A good example is how you've likely memorized your phone number, not by trying to remember all the digits at once, but by dividing it into smaller, familiar parts. Another practical example of chunking is when learning a new language. Instead of trying to memorize a list of 50 words at once, you can group them by categories, such as household objects, food, or animals. This makes associating concepts easier and creates stronger mental connections, allowing you to recall words more quickly and efficiently. Step 2. Use association techniques and mnemonics. Have you ever caught yourself creating a little tune or rhyme to remember something? That's what we call a mnemonic, a tool that uses creative associations to help the brain memorize information. After all, the brain loves patterns and images. When you associate something new with a strong image, rhyme, or familiar concept, you make the task of memorizing much easier. For example, to remember the colors of the rainbow in English, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, you can use the acronym ROIG-BIV. Another classic example is memorizing the lines of a musical staff, E, G, B, D, F, with the phrase, "Every good boy does fine." The key to success with this technique is creativity and personalization. The more you associate information with something unique and personal to you, the easier it will be to remember. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. The more absurd or funny the association, the more likely it is to stick in your memory. Step 3. Active and spaced review. Active review is like a workout for your brain. Instead of passively rereading material, you engage more deeply by asking yourself questions, testing your knowledge, or explaining the content to someone else. By doing this, you stimulate more areas of the brain and strengthen neural connections. Spaced review is a powerful complement to this. Instead of reviewing everything at once, which often results in weak retention, spaced review suggests revisiting the information at increasing intervals. For example, one day after learning something new, then again in a week, and later in a month. This interval gives the brain time to reinforce these memories and build stronger roads. It's like building a muscle. The more you exercise it over time, the stronger it becomes. Studies show that this practice of spaced review has a direct effect on long-term memory, making information more resistant to forgetting. Step 4. Engage multiple senses in the study process. Engaging multiple senses in the study process is a powerful way to reinforce learning because it uses various perception channels, such as sight, hearing, touch, and even movement, to create multiple neural connections. These connections act as different routes leading to the same destination, the information you want to remember. It's like creating several paths in a forest to reach the same point. The more trails you make, the easier it is to find the way, even if one route is blocked. For example, when studying a text, you can significantly enhance comprehension and memorization by not only reading silently, but also speaking the words out loud. This simple addition of hearing to the reading process engages more senses, reinforcing information retention. Furthermore, taking handwritten notes activates touch and motor coordination, helping to solidify the content in the brain. If you add the creation of diagrams, charts, or drawings that visually represent the concept you are studying, you engage even more sensory channels, which makes processing and consolidating information easier. The science behind this is clear. The brain processes information better when it is presented multimodally. This happens because different senses activate different brain regions. When we only use one sense, such as reading a text passively, we limit the number of regions activated. But when you speak out loud, hear your own voice, write, and visualize concepts simultaneously, several areas of the brain are activated at once, strengthening the neural connection formed around the new information. Another practical example is the use of kinesthetic memory. This involves associating movement with learning, a technique particularly useful for people who learn better through active or hands-on methods. If you're studying for an exam, for instance, it can be effective to pace back and forth while reciting information or even use gestures to represent certain concepts. Physical movement helps the brain link information to physical actions, creating an anchor that facilitates memory recall later. To make studying even more efficient, you can integrate other senses such as smell or taste. Though it may seem unusual, using a specific perfume or scented candle while studying can help create an olfactory association with the content. Similarly, consuming a certain type of food or drink while studying and then again during review can reinforce the connection with the learned information. If you're preparing for a presentation or oral exam, try recording yourself reading the content and listening to the recordings while doing other activities, such as walking or doing household chores. This allows you to keep absorbing the content audibly even when you're not focused on reading or writing. Another powerful technique is using practical simulations. For example, if you're learning a new language, don't just limit yourself to reading and writing. Listen to music or watch videos in the language and try speaking with native speakers. This way, you engage both hearing and speaking, creating a richer and more interactive learning experience. Thus, engaging multiple senses in the study process not only makes learning more interesting and varied, but also increases retention and comprehension. The key is to use a multimodal approach that connects the senses and strengthens neural pathways, making learning not only more effective, but also more enjoyable and interactive. Step 5. Create emotional and contextual connections. Emotions are powerful allies of memory. When something emotionally touches us, the brain naturally tends to store that information more strongly. Therefore, associating what you're studying with an emotion can increase your chances of recalling that information later. For example, if you connect a particular historical date to a strong emotion, like surprise or admiration, or imagine what it would be like to live through that moment, it will make the memory more vivid. Additionally, varying the context in which you learn can also improve retention. Studying in different locations, for example, or at different times of day, creates multiple contextual associations that the brain can use to access information. The importance of practicing and adjusting techniques. These memorization techniques are not magic solutions that work immediately for everyone. They require constant practice. As you incorporate them into your study or work routine, you'll notice which ones work best for you. This means you can adjust the methods to suit your needs and even combine them. Just like any other skill, memorization improves with time and regular practice. So, experiment with different approaches, keep an open mind, and adapt the techniques to your own learning patterns. With these techniques, memorization will stop being a stressful challenge and become a more efficient and natural practice. The key is to combine different strategies and maintain consistency in the process. If you like this, subscribe to the channel